Bring it on. I used to have a rule that I didn't accept any questions given by a person who was under 12 years of age because I can't answer them. Today we've got a whole audience full of people who are under 12, and I guess I'm on the hot seat. So let's go to Terry and see what's going to happen.
Listen, Richard is in the circle because he's 12, right?
Yes.
You're from Newport News?
Yes.
And what's your question for Pat, Richard?
My question is, how will the new administration affect Christian families?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Initially, I don't think it's going to have too much effect, but later on, there are going to be all kinds of initiatives that are going to come out of Washington that are going to make it hard for homeschoolers, hard for Christian schools, hard in terms of the life issue. There'll be many instances where the government's going to be pushing policies that are not exactly Christian. So let's pray for our president and hope for the best. Terry?
Tell us your name and where you're from.
Pamela Freeman from Newport News.
And what's your question, Pam?
My question is, if the U.S. adopts the UN resolution on the rights of the child, what impact will that have on parental rights and especially our right to homeschool?
I hope we don't adopt that because it will take away the sovereignty of the United States, and it's a very dangerous thing. It can have devastating effects. You know, one day you'll have UN thought police running around telling you what to think and what to do and dominating the way we educate our children. I hope there'll be enough will in Congress that will not ratify that thing. Terry?
Tell us your name.
Peter.
And Peter, how old are you?
12.
Okay, you're in the circle too. What's your question for Pat?
What do you think about the stimulus bill?
The one that they've just passed, I think it's going to be a disaster. You're going to be paying off those bills long after I'm gone. My children and grandchildren are going to have to pay for it. There's an incredible amount of wasted money in that. And as we said at the beginning of this program, nobody really knows where all that stuff's going to be spent. I mean, you go into a conference and you're dealing with tens of billions of dollars. $1 billion is a lot of money. How's it going to be broken down? What's it going to be spent on? Well, nobody knows for sure. They just say, well, it'll be $200 billion for infrastructure. Well, that sounds nice. There'll be $50 billion for education, but where, how, under what circumstances, who will get it, and how will they? So I think it's a big mistake. This economy will come out of this problem. They've got economic problem. We've had economic problems in the past. They're overselling this thing. I think the president is overstating the dangers. Everybody's moaning about it, but there are ways of fixing it a whole lot simpler than what they're doing, and they aren't taking that way. They're going to load us down with debts that are going to have to be repaid. Terry?
Pat, this is Tim. Tim, how old are you?
10.
And where are you from?
Hampton.
Well, you're not 12, but let's see if you can stump him. What's your question?
How long have you been on the 700 Club?
And you've been alive, I'll tell you that. I started down here in 1959, so we were right at 50 years or close to it, and the 700 Club came on in 67, so you can figure it's a long time. Go ahead.
This is Karen. Karen, where are you from?
I'm from Carrollton.
And what's your question?
I have a daughter that is in a local community college, and recently she was made to watch a documentary that denounced Christianity. And I was just wondering, how do you believe she can best approach this with her superiors when she is in school?
Well, if she can address it, it's sometimes hard. She might find a sympathetic teacher. A state-run institution should not do that. They would be liable to a lawsuit. The state is not supposed to take sides for or against any religious belief. And I think to come out against Christianity, whoever put that thing on should be fired, frankly. But how does she approach it? Well, I guess if she wants to go through the list of the things that are in there that she thinks are wrong, she can refute them, write a paper about it, and say, this film was wrong because of this, 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 and this. And a good teacher would say, you're a good student and I'll give you an A for doing that. A bad teacher will flunk her.
There's also the ACLJ, right?
It is, but I mean, that's lawsuit material.
Okay, this is Jacob. Jacob, how old are you?
10.
And what's your question for Pat?
If you can interview Charles Darwin, what questions will you ask him?
Aren't you sorry you did what you did? As a matter of fact, I was told by the former dean of our School of Law that Darwin renounced a lot of these things before he died. He realized how wrong he was, and he realized that people had picked up from some of his initial discoveries and had expanded them way beyond whatever he thought. So if my dean was correct, Darwin himself apologized for it, and I think that's what I would ask him, you know. Why did you do it, and aren't you sorry? Terry?
Hey, tell us your name
Rennie Marvel from Hampton.
and what's your question, Rennie?
I was wondering, what would God's viewpoint be on the redistribution of wealth by government, especially in light of this current economic stimulus bill?
Well, I think God's on the side of making sure the poor are looked after. We're not supposed to favor the rich or favor the poor in lawsuits. We're supposed to give even justice. So things that are taking from one and giving to another, I think would go contrary to the Bible. But God is on the side of helping the poor, and we see that over and over again in the Bible. Terry?
Tell us your name and how old you are.
I'm Sarah, and I'm 11 years old.
And what's your question, Sarah?
Do you think the new administration will do anything to take away our religious freedom?
I'm not sure the administration will, but I think a few more liberal judges on the Supreme Court, and you cannot imagine what will happen. There was a fellow behind me in law school. His name is Stephen Lionheart. He is now a senior judge on the United States Ninth Circuit, which is the most liberal circuit. That court just ruled that the Defense of Marriage Act, which is passed by the Congress, was, quote, unconstitutional. Well, he was wrong, but nevertheless, there's a circuit court saying that. So now we're talking about marriage being a man and a woman, and he says that's unconstitutional. Courts are in trouble.